Medical consensus is clear on the baseline. Physical exercise improves cognitive function across multiple domains and drives active neuroplasticity. Yet, push a training session to absolute maximum physical exertion, and your immediate cognitive performance plummets. You are left completely exhausted and mentally dragging. Division I student athletes experience this boundary condition regularly. After a punishing morning training block, they often have to sit at the front of a lecture hall and employ deliberate coping strategies just to keep their attention from drifting in class. Mainstream advice suggests we should exercise to wake up our brains, but practitioners who push deep into their physiological reserves know that a grueling, high-volume workout leaves you dragging through your afternoon cognitive tasks. The state of your nervous system immediately following a workout operates under a different set of biological rules than the structural adaptations that occur in your brain over a period of months. The neurological effects of exercise are strictly bifurcated. Optimizing for immediate cognitive arousal requires a completely opposing physiological stimulus than optimizing for chronic structural adaptation. Acute cognitive enhancement relies on a specific biochemical mechanism, a submaximal release of catecholamines, like adrenaline and dopamine, alongside a mild elevation of cortisol. This chemical release is an area under the curve equation, where volume and intensity dictate your exact level of subsequent focus. This inverted U-chart maps the arousal curve. The x-axis tracks the biochemical load of catecholamines and cortisol, while the y-axis tracks acute cognitive performance. Consider an exhaustive protocol, like a flat-out 2,000-meter rowing test. Pushing your body to failure dumps a massive chemical load, driving you past peak arousal and crashing immediate cognitive capacity. Conversely, meta-analyses point to a lighter ideal for immediate intellectual preparation, a steady 20-minute jog. This effort maximizes the y-axis, yielding peak arousal without crossing into fatigue. A microdosing alternative also exists, ultra-short 6-second sprints separated by massive rest periods. Both the jog and microsprints provide a controlled release, nudging the brain up the arousal curve without crossing into a systemic deficit. To prime your brain for deep, immediate cognitive work, training volume must be intentionally capped. Leaving neurological reserves intact is mandatory for high-level intellectual output. When we shift focus from acute chemical arousal to chronic structural adaptation, literally increasing the volume of the hippocampus, the required stimulus flips entirely. A recent landmark clinical trial randomized older adults into 3 specific exercise interventions to measure long-term cognitive adaptation. This clinical chart details the data. 2 groups established baseline and moderate thresholds using low-intensity and Zone 2 protocols. The third group endured an intense Norwegian 4x4 HIIT framework. Surprisingly, the high-intensity group improved their cardiovascular fitness just as much as the moderate group, but the neurological endpoints regarding physical brain structure diverged completely. MRI scans revealed the high-intensity group achieved superior hippocampal function and structural volume. This physical brain alteration demonstrated significant durability, persisting in these adults for a full 5 years after the 6-month intervention ended. Moderate exercise provides acute arousal, but triggering permanent structural neuroplasticity requires crossing a threshold of severe metabolic stress. A prevailing misconception in the fitness industry frames exercise-induced cortisol as universally toxic, a stress hormone that destroys recovery. The biological reality of high-intensity interval training shows otherwise. Maximal muscular exertion drives a localized release of myokines and systemic lactate. These molecules, along with high levels of cortisol, circulate out of the muscle tissue and travel through the systemic bloodstream directly toward the brain. Lactate easily permeates the blood-brain barrier, acting as a crucial signaling molecule for the central nervous system. Once inside, this chemical influx initiates a precise cascade. The combination directly stimulates the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, deep within the hippocampus. The trial data exposed a direct correlation between exertion and physical brain adaptation. Within the study, participants who worked at higher intensities and released more cortisol saw the most significant improvements in hippocampal structure. In the context of intense physical exertion, cortisol and lactate act as the biological catalysts required to drive lasting structural change. The central operational constraint is clear. You cannot optimize a single training session for both immediate cognitive output and maximal structural adaptation. This dual-axis dose-response dashboard synthesizes both pathways. The x-axis tracks exercise intensity and volume against two distinct paths, the inverted U of acute arousal and a rising exponential curve representing long-term structural adaptation. When your day requires heavy, immediate intellectual performance, like data analysis, writing, or taking an exam, your training protocol must be restrained. You require a low-volume, moderate-intensity stimulus. This optimizes the catecholamine cocktail for focus, while successfully avoiding a central nervous system deficit. When your primary objective shifts to long-term neuroprotection and physical hippocampal growth, the parameters invert. You must prescribe maximal intensity protocols, like the Norwegian 4x4, purposefully pushing to the extreme right of the volume and intensity axis to trigger metabolic stress. Executing this chronic protocol requires a strict trade-off. Practitioners must accept that their acute cognitive function will be severely compromised for the remainder of that day. The brain's response to exercise is dictated by precise chemical thresholds. True high-performance programming requires intentionally selecting your specific cognitive objective before the physical workout ever begins.